Hello, welcome to the live stream of Aini Living Conversations. Today we're talking about stripping away the patriarchal psychosis. And I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, who's with me from Indianola, Oklahoma. And I'm Julian Catari in Jalapa, Veracruz. And so you might be wondering, what is the patriarchal psychosis? So that's what you're going to be learning about today. You might have heard about the system, about the matrix, about domination, and we're going to tie that to I like to think of it as an archetype. It's like this patriarchal archetype, this mindset, this kind of,
it's a psychotic archetype,
and it's all psychotic, because as you get, if you dwell deep into why we think that way, why we act this way, why this happens, why that happens, you figure that there's no sane reason. It's all just psychotic mindset that's behind it. So that's what we're going to be deconstructing and talking about today. So welcome everyone, and please, if you want to jump in with a comment, please go ahead.
So tonight we're going to start first with some words from Holy Mother, from Great Mother, the All Mother Namu. And for those watchers, the book, The Goddess Bible, is where I got this from. This is the first time we've ever had true dealings, true wisdom directly from the goddess religions, the matriarchal religions. And the book will tell you the story of how this clay urn was found in a cave in the Middle East back in 1995 and was spirited out of there so that people could decode everything in this. And it's directly from Holy Mother. So from the Book of Wisdom, this is what is to be, that she gave us to be followed. The first wisdom is love. Love the All Mother Namu as she loves you, and love all that she birthed from her spread vulva. This is the highest wisdom. Give pleasure. Now, in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform, pleasure and love are the same. They're intermixed. There's no difference. Give pleasure to one another as the All Mother gives you pleasure. The best greeting to a stranger is a pleasure gift. Now, let's see how patriarchal psychosis has twisted this. The pleasure gift, the pleasure rights are sexual. We're going to talk about that. You're going to hear about pleasure rights in here, are sexual. Right? The best greeting to a stranger is a pleasure gift. How has patriarchal psychosis twisted this? Do not talk to strangers. Do not talk to strangers. Do not talk to strangers.
And now it's don't even touch your best friend.
Yeah. So a woman who sends love offerings to the lady pleases her, the lady, the Holy Mother. So what's that? Self-pleasuring. Right? A man who sends love offerings to the lady through a woman's pleasure and his own also pleases her. The measure of a man is the pleasure he gives to his wife. Men shall be attentive first to their mothers, afterward to their wives, and always to the sacred lady. What is blessed in a man is his steadfast love for his mother, his wife, his sister, and above all, for the great lady. A woman seeking counsel of the lady through the prophecy priestess shall offer a measure of oil or of grain to accompany the request. She shall bring the oil in a new jar and the grain in an unglazed bowl. Very specific, right? A man who does not ask the wisdom of a woman before acting is sure to err. We need to bring this back. A man who asks for wisdom and then does not act upon it is bent on destruction. I would agree with that. A man whose goddess root delights in pleasure giving, and this is what they call the penis, the goddess root. I like that term. Delights, a man whose goddess root delights in pleasure giving, he is a treasure, and his deeds glisten like gold before the lady. But a man who says a little pleasure is enough for you will not receive her blessing. A wise man studies the sacred pleasure ointments and herbs. He learns the sacred pleasure postures. Then if a woman during worship, sex, says to him, take this posture or stroke my vulva with this ointment, he will not prove himself an ignorant oaf. A man who fails to hear instructions in the worship bed strays from the true path. So on this note, the temples of the goddess religions were not places where you went and sat in a hard pew. It was you went and had sex in the temple. They had festivals where the high priestess and her consort would lead the congregation in sexual pleasure.
Okay. This must be challenging to some ears.
Yes.
But then that's part of the programming, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a woman takes a consort, they should not engage in congress worship, which the woman, when they were translating these tablets, they couldn't figure out what word to use because they said it's either way too clinical, our words for sex, or they're vulgar. So they chose the word congress. So when a woman takes a consort, they should not engage in congress worship with any other person for 1 year from the day of the sacrament. How has patriarchal psychosis twisted this? Your entire fucking life till death do us part. 1 year. Then his root shall be bound to the woman, even though after a year he and she may both engage in stranger worship 1,000 times. And this is the Navajo man I was talking with last year. He was saying, you know, they're matriarchal. They get married, but if they want to have sex with either one, you know, both husband and wife are allowed to, right? There's not this jealousy, this possession. And I was talking with a friend the other night about this, letting him know about this. And he said he finally pulled the skeleton out of himself that, you know, because he and his wife split a year ago. And he's like, you know, the reality is only the first 3 to 4 years of my 20-year marriage were good. So this is how it's been. The psychosis has changed this. So on Asherah Day of Mother Week, let your congress offering be made with those whose spirits are troubled or for whom worship is made difficult by disease or deformity. How is this? So on this specific day of Mother Week, let your sex offering be made with those who are less fortunate. How has patriarchal psychosis twisted this? Giving Tuesday.
Okay.
Money. Money. So the goddess religion is based on love. The patriarchal psychotic religions are based on money. Everything's money. Right. So the wild, in doing this, the wild are tamed, the lame become straight, the broken are whole when they send pleasure to the great lady. When you insist in the worship of the unfortunate, her dreams rain bounty on you. And this is also twisted. Like I was just telling you this story with this man, this friend in my life, right? He doesn't want to actually do the mechanic work so much he just keeps wanting to offer money. This is the love of the patriarchal religion is money. This is the psychosis. It's money.
Yeah.
Rather than helping.
And doing what is, I mean, whatever you do with love, and that's the pleasure of doing it, even if
there's no
greasy or whatever.
Right, yeah. So, number 16, if a man asks a woman for sacred congress and in being refused, he overcomes her, he rapes her, his pleasure is not accepted by the lady, and the priestess will take his penis. It's the only time they ever use that word.
Okay.
But she will not offer it to the lady as an offering. She will throw it to the dogs to devour. How many men would stop raping if they had their penis taken off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Well, they do in some cultures, I think they have some type of punishment like that.
Right. But how has this been twisted? How has patriarchal psychosis twisted this?
Mm-hmm.
In the Muslim religions, with scraping the woman's vulva, the girl's vulva off and suturing her together.
Okay, yeah. I've heard that in Africa they do that at the
Not just Africa, that's all Muslim religions.
Genital mutilation.
Mutilation, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I couldn't think of a more awful thing.
No.
But then there's a circumcision from the Jews as well.
Oh no, we're gonna get into that. That was not mutilation. That was because a circumcised man can give pleasure to his wife far longer, to his woman far longer than he can with the foreskin. That was the reason for that. That was decreed by All-Mother Namu.
Okay.
But that was also twisted by patriarchal psychosis.
Okay.
So a woman's wealth and sacred objects, jewels, golds, fields, produce, houses, barns, and animals, when she dies, will be divided among her daughters by the Holy Mother, right? By the great All-Mother Namu. If she has no daughters, it may be divided among her mother, sisters, and her son's wives. And if she has neither daughter, sister, nor mother, and her sons are unmarried at her death, her property of all kinds will become the property of the lady's temple. How has this been twisted? Ha ha! The unam sanctum. I own everything. I am the vicar of Christ. You will give everything to me, the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the unam sanctum expired.
Will you tell us about that? Or you kind of did.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more to tell about that.
The only thing we have to tell about that is the Pope has relinquished his claim on the world. So any of us that continue perpetuating the system are fucking idiots because it's done.
But even then, I mean, whatever they claimed, it's just a claim. I mean.
Yeah, even then, it wasn't law. It was just a claim. We never had to be obedient to it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Right. But this is why we need to expose the psychosis. So number 18, a woman who sends her joy through women, so lesbian, shall at the great festival invite a man to water her womb. This is what they called it. I like that. She will do this even if she can offer scant pleasure from the rite, for such is pleasing to the lady. So she who hears, let her understand. So it was like, be lesbian if you want to, but come together with a man once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And the same, a man.
And they do that. I think they do that. They don't show it off, but very quietly they do get with a man from time to time.
Yeah. A man whose joy comes from men, let him at the great festival worship with a woman. Same thing. Right? Mm-hmm. If his goddess root does not give pleasure, he shall make his offering with the flower kiss, the vulva kiss. Then the lady will bless his pleasures among men throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
So she's saying, be gay, be lesbian if you want to be, but come together in the way I want you to for one time a year. How hard is that?
Mm-hmm.
On the sacred Lady Day after giving birth, you shall bring your daughter to the temple to consecrate her to the All-Mother. This is the first consecration. So we see this specifically in Catholicism with christening, right? Mm-hmm. Your daughter shall again be consecrated to the lady on the first dark moon day after her first vulva blood. This is the second consecration. We do not see this at all. At all. Right? On the Lady Day of the third moon, following her second consecration, your daughter shall be consecrated in the lady's pleasure. This means she is taught sex by the Congress priestess, by the sex priestess in the temple. This is her third consecration, and now she enters full kindredship with the Holy Lady. Now, on the second Lady Day after giving birth, you shall bring your son to the castration priestess with an offering of grain or oil to make the foreskin offering. This is where it is, because she said a man who's been circumcised can give more pleasure for longer.
Okay.
That was the reasoning. Nothing other than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a promise offering of pleasure to the All-Mother. To women, you shall withhold from root congress between Lad Day and Izada Day of Mother Week each moon. Do not allow your sacred vulva blood to be contaminated by sweet water. And I like that. I like that term, sweet water. So a man who suckles at his wife's breast is both a son and lover, and her heart will open to him, and she will give him wise counsel always.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, a woman who opens her ear to the lady's voice and hears well is a signpost to her people, pointing them in the right way. There was more than that, and in the book there's 33 of these pieces of wisdom from All-Mother Namu, and I didn't put them all because they didn't need to be all given, but they said there's a whole lot, and I hope we get more from them, because this is very interesting. It shows us again how patriarchal psychosis has twisted this into psychosis. So now we're going to go into another story from them, which again shows us the twist into the psychosis. So the consort, remember, Namu gave great All-Mother Namu, Spider Woman, gave birth to pleasure first, and then to her daughter Yahu, and then to the 8 goddesses, and then to the consort. Mm-hmm. Which is very interesting, because we know from embryology that there's 8 metabolic fields that form the embryo from the outside in. So that's the truest version of the creation story I can think about. Mm-hmm. Right. Anyway, so the consorts. After the goddesses came the consorts. So one of the holy consorts was envious. Elohi was envious. A consort of the 8 goddesses was jealous. Elohi was jealous. And Elohi said to his brothers, the people are sending pleasure offerings to the All-Mother's dreams. They send kissing the vulva flower. They send stroking the penis root. They send mounting the mountain. They send watering the womb. But they do not know us. They do not send us worship. They do not make offerings to us, only to great Namu, the All-Mother. The consort was angry. Elohi was angry. He said, why do they send offerings to great Namu, the All-Mother who is asleep? Why do they pleasure her dreams? They send nothing to us. They send nothing to the consort gods. They offer only to great Namu who is asleep. Now, I have experienced this. Not this blatantly, but when I think about it, the past man I was involved with, when we first started getting involved, we were in a drought here in Oklahoma. And it started raining one evening, and I was ecstatic with the rain. It was such a blessing. I opened a bottle of champagne, and I was celebrating. And he said, I want to see you. And I said, well, I'm celebrating the rain. And he's like, well, I got to see you now. And I said, well, okay, come on then. So when he got here, I raced out. I had the bottle of champagne. I gave him a glass of champagne. I ran out to the porch. I was excited. I was ecstatic about the rain. And I welcomed the spirit keepers of each direction, right? Mm-hmm. And he tried to join me, but after that, he got jealous and he made it all about him. He could not join me in giving giving pleasure to All-Mother. It had to be about him. Mm-hmm. I had to be excited to see him. I couldn't possibly be that excited about the rain, about the gift of rain from All Mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where that jealousy, so this is where we need to see the first psychosis, this first psychosis of why is this not all about me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the romanticism that we're starting to criticize.
Yeah.
It's really not romanticism. It's
No,
what you say,
it's
jealousy.
just jealousy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he said, I will send the people an omen. I will send them a warning. I will send flood and famine so they know us, man, the consorts. I will send disaster. I will send disease. I will destroy great Namu's pleasure garden. I will drive them out of the pleasure garden. The people will know my anger. They will know that I am a jealous God. They will make offerings to me. They will send smoke offerings. They will send sacrifice offerings and blood offerings because I am a jealous God.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this. How has this become part of the psychosis? We see this all over reader boards from the churches. Vengeance is mine, says God. You're driving down the highway and you see a church with a reader board that says, vengeance is mine, says God. He wasn't even a God, he was a consort.
Mm-hmm.
Elohi said, I will send rain. I will send a flood to the pleasure garden. I will cause the rivers to rise. I will make the pleasure garden a sea. There will be no house, no sheepfold. There will be no place for them. They will make offerings to me until they make offerings to me, until they offer blood. Elohi said, I will send earthquake. The sacred mountain will vomit fire. I will hide the sun. There will be no light for them until they make offerings to me, until they offer me their sheep. Elohi said, I will send disease upon them. I will send pain and disfigurement. There will be no ease for them, no comfort, until they make sacrifice to me, until they offer me their children. Do we see the psychosis in this? That is still hugely present today.
Mm-hmm.
So the rains came without ceasing, the waters of earth rose, the rivers rose, the All-Mother's garden was flooded. There was no house, no sheepfold, there was no place for the people. The earth shook and trembled, fire reached toward the heavens, smoke hid the sun, and there was no light for the people. The people became ill, they were in pain, their bodies shriveled and swelled, and their suffering was great. The people wept and wailed, Elohi is angry with us. The pleasure garden is cursed. We must leave the pleasure garden. And they fled to the 8 directions. They fled to the caves. They fled to the mountains. The people were lost and dismayed. They were sick and hungry, and they forgot the pleasure offerings for All Mother Namu. They made sacrifice to the consort god, the Aztecs. They made smoke and blood offerings to Elohi, the Aztecs. Right? There were others, but they sacrificed their children for the bloodlust of Elohi. They neglected the kissing of the vulva flower. They neglected the stroking of the penis root. They neglected the mounting the mountain position. There was no watering of the womb. I have to laugh because this is older than dirt, literally, right? Great Namu's sleep was disturbed. There were no pleasure offerings in her dreams, and her daughter Yahu looked to the earth. She saw the suffering of the people, and she was angry with the consort Elohi. Why have you sent disaster to the All-Mother's pleasure garden? Why have you made the people suffer? Why do you seek blood offerings? Why do you ask of them blood sacrifice, the blood of their children? So Elohi was shamed before the 8 goddesses. He was shamed before all the consorts, and he made no answer to holy Yahu. She said to him, this is the great lady's will. Namu has not birthed you from her sacred vulva. You are no longer neither son nor lover. You are not of the family of gods. You are no longer our consort Elohi. None will enact a sacred pleasure rites with you. Your root will not enter our sacred vulvas. Your emission will not water our wombs. Your sweet water will not water our wombs. You are cast out forever from our abode. You will travel the empty worlds, fondling your root alone. You will wander between heaven and earth, a bar between the great lady Namu and the people. Those who offer blood sacrifice to you will no longer make pleasure offerings to the lady. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. Great Namu will not dream of them. They will be cursed. They will live without joy. They will find nowhere to build their blood altars. They will wander Great Namu's earth, seeking a place, finding none. Their fear and suffering will be your sustenance, so you will increase their fear and suffering. You will drink their blood sacrifices to no avail, because they will all be cursed until the day they remember the lady, until the day they remember Great Namu, until they make love offerings again to Great Namu, so that she sees them in her dreams. And this was the reason she showed up to Juan Diego on Tepeyac Hill and said, build me a temple. But it wasn't it certainly wasn't the basilica that she envisioned. So on that note, let's delve into the mechanistic patriarchal psychosis that we're all infected with. So if God is the mother of the universe, then the creation is of the same substance as her. It is of her as a child is of its mother's substance. And so this means that the whole of creation is divine and divinely related. The female X chromosome is 3 to 4 times longer than the male Y chromosome. The X carries the overwhelming preponderance of critical genetic information that is unrelated to sex that is needed to create a human being. So further, while only half of the population has the Y chromosome, every single one of us, both male and female, contain an X chromosome. It is our primary genetic bond as a species. So the female egg, even before it mates with a sperm, it generates an electrical field, not just one, but 8, the 8 goddesses, right? That becomes the shaping energy of the embryo as it develops into an independent being. The mother field is both the biological environment and the shaper of form within the environment. These are both biological and spiritual facts. So when the cult of the male consort god, Elohi, was established, there must have been great difficulty in explaining how he could be the giver of life to all creation. And so the whole attitude of humans towards the All-Mother, Great Lady, had to be altered, violently altered. There could not be that same vital, biological, and magical link between the child and father as there is between the child and its mother, because two beings evolving in and from the same body, the same rhythm, the same dreams, that's a magical connection. So from the religious point of view, this means that the loss between the human and divine of direct, continuous, physical, emotional, spiritual relationship. The Father is not the same all-containing, all-infusing, shaping, and nourishing substance, and so the relation between humans and Father God, Elohi, becomes abstract, alienated, distant, and moralistic. The abstract God is now inorganic, and equally inorganic is the rigid class systems of royal masters served by slave labor that quickly coalesced around the ruling patriarchal elite. And we can say, well, there's no class system except for in India, and my answer to that is bullshit. You see class system all over. Especially with the upper class, the middle class, the lower class. Tell me that's not a class system. So the few can rule the many only with the help of punitive religious ideologies, by means of which the unjust advantage of the few and the raw exploitation of the many are somehow justified by God, by caste theology. And so this male God must be enforced on the people by the punitive and guilt-projecting ideologies of a privileged priesthood. In their writings and doctrines flooding the Bronze Age, creation now comes to be seen as evil. The Creator is above and apart from his creation, and while he is perfect, the world he created is flawed. Is that not psychotic?
It is.
Absolutely. And so the idea of original sin was conceived to rationalize the unnatural new relation between the human soul and the aloof God. This laid the basis for all further alienated relationships between people and God, between people and people, between people and our more than human life world. For now, the primary relation is not that we share the same divine substance, but that we share the same material corruption. Again, psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire priesthood exists to redeem us from the sin of being born from the mother. And to rationalize class disparity by preaching that the class system is God's design, his method for creating civilized order out of the corruption and chaos of human flesh. That's the purpose of this psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
For such an unjust system to work for any prolonged period of time, it is necessary for masses of people to believe that they deserve the injustice.
Yeah.
This is why the Father's way, patriarchal psychotic filth, is absolute.
Mm-hmm.
So once this cult leader monster was embedded in the world, his worshippers became totally obsessed with the invention also of the devil. In patriarchal mechanistic psychosis, the mater, M-A-T-R, character of the symbol materia is devalued. Matter is no longer revered as the foundation substance of the world of growth and experience. Matter is no longer intuited as an evolutionary phenomenon, a two-dimensionality of spirit and matter, or as the potentia of consciousness. Matter has become inert and wholly mechanized, robotic.
Mm-hmm.
With the Industrial Revolution and the rise of science as the dominant patriarchal religion or mind technology, an ironic crossover occurred. Materialism becomes the dominant and manly ideology, while spirituality is consigned to an increasingly ethereal, irrelevant, and peripheral sphere of thought. But still, matter is viewed as dumb and inert and mechanistic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Materialism is dominant, but it's dumb, inert, and mechanistic. Is that not psychotic?
It's alive, but it's dead.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Bipolar, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Schizophrenia, right there. Right? Materialism does not actually glory in matter. It glories in the male's ability to manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
The new materialism is machine worship and product worship.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the vital and ecstatic celebration of spirit matter that characterized the goddess religions. The current thrust of materialism is to escape the Earth's orbit, to flee the knowledge and the problems of our messy, bloody, hungry, and waste-producing bodily organs. Remember all the toilet paper that got bought during COVID. But to dwell in wholly sterile and man-made stations in space.
That's
we can't
the
take
most
all the
psychotic
toilet
thing.
paper up there with us.
I believe that's so psychotic to people look forward to living in space or to colonizing Mars. Isn't that the
I know, yeah, right.
most awful thing you can think of?
Absolutely psychotic. So no one wholly involved in an ongoing life process can conceive of objectifying the experience. This arose among men who were functional spectators of lives created by women. These were the male priesthoods, men who did not give birth to creatures who experienced both ecstasy and pain and who would die. Men whose self-appointed task was the uninvolved organization and manipulation of life into abstract and systematic terms for the sake of secular control and power. Male priesthoods are characterized by their dogmatic attempts to control a process they do not participate in and cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Such mechanical, anti-natural, remote control concepts of life have choked the springs of the living waters. And again, I'm not saying I'm saying here I'm not man bashing. Absolutely not man bashing. Not saying men are evil and we need to get rid of them. No, I quite like men. But right, you got men don't give birth. It's just that simple. You can't. It's just a process you can't participate in other than be a spectator. And it doesn't make me any better than you, right? It's just the difference. Such mechanical, anti-natural, remote control concepts of life have choked the springs of the living waters. We said that. So the patriarchal, Kabbalistic world tree with roots exclusively in the sky is wholly cerebral and unreal. To erase the earth side of the cerebral equation is to de-energize the equation. Think about this too. I mean, that's all they preach. All I heard growing up was the second coming and the other of Jesus to take us all to heaven, right? And in the other religions, it's called the rapture. Got to be raptured off the earth. The thrust is up and out, away from material. Right? To deny the earth roots of the world tree is to deny the serpent roots of the spine. Why do we have so much back issues? Right? And so natural inherent kundalini powers of the spine, sexuality, and the brainstem have been opposed. And now the Father God is both anti-sexual and anti-evolutionary. Absolutely 100% true in all religions. The Father God is both anti-sexual and anti-evolutionary. This is our grotesque, psychotic situation today. An anti-sexual God is now worshipped as the creator of life. Hello, is that not psychotic?
Yeah.
And wherever you find a puritanical God, anti-sexual God, you will find a pornographic God.
You gotta have that psychotic double masking.
Well, because the human mind will strive for balance.
Right. And that concerns all sexual things today. That's like
absolutely. Absolutely. And an anti-evolutionary God is now worshipped as the goal of human progress, to be achieved not by organic growth of consciousness, but by worship of developmental machine programs and technologies. We see this in the push for AI, do we not? The psychosis. The immortality promised by the moon goddess was not a state of perfection or stasis in eternal life. She offers an ever-renewed life like her own, in which diminishing and dying are as essential to spiritual growth as birth and becoming. Her redemption is not from sin and matter, but from the psychosis, stalagmites and stalactites that block the self from its source. It is union of the opposites within the psyche which brings release from the final power of death, which allows consciousness to pulsate from one dimension to another in a cosmic field. And this is the only redeeming experience, to be lived by an inner presence, the all-mother behind the ego. The Olympian male. The characteristic of the Olympian god, patriarchal, in contrast to the loving goddess, matriarchal, is that the Olympian's form is rigidly fixed and always human. He has lost his animal forms and his magical ability to shapeshift from one energy shape to another. He's lost his alchemical properties. Remember, we talked about how the new alchemy, death by fire, right? The Olympian is idealized, rationalized, aloof and deathless, and so ultimately he's too geometric to move us. The Olympian does not evolve, he apotheosizes to the blare of trumpets. That means he ascends to heaven to become a god to the blare of trumpets. This means he's not born from woman or earth or matter, but from his own absolute will. And I saw this psychosis in my dad. I saw it in Jack. I see it in neighbor down the road. Absolute will. I'll pray about it, but it will be by my will.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely psychotic. He represents a static perfection in human form, incapable of transformation or ecstatic change. Because as a god, he is now an intellectual concept only. And so energy exchange between all creatures and their magical, loving, shape-shifting deity is broken. God has now become a mere idea, and his world is mere mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
That is the psychosis we live in. The Olympians were gods of the newly established ruling elite, which did no communal work, but were serviced by slave labor. The social structure represented by the Greek Olympians was patrilineal and class hierarchic. And so it lifted itself above the age-old laws of biology and evolution to base itself on conceptual property power.
Mm-hmm.
The signature of the new Olympian male was that not that he represented the peasants of the land and the masses of people, but the ruling elite who had the power to back him up. And where did this power come from? The triumph of the patriarchy in the Bronze Age corresponded with the development of heavy metals and their connection to professional warfare.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have an anti-sexual, anti-evolutionary war god.
Mm-hmm.
Metallurgy, when it first appeared, was a sacred art under the guardianship of the goddess, with strong taboos attached to it. Metals were light, gold, silver, tin, and copper, and they were mostly shaped into jewelry, ornaments, and ceremonial vessels. Sacred metallurgy served the Neolithic goddess and the people wisely, but in the Bronze Age, the ritual controls were broken and metallurgy passed into the male sphere entirely. It became a secular industry and a religious industry in service to the god of war. This opened the earth up for the first time to violent exploitation and caused struggles between male groups for control of her ores. That's the psychotic filth we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
With the buildup of stored grain, ever increasing Neolithic abundance in settled village, we had a new male profession, grain guardian, from which organized marauding and robbing began. Stock breeding also led to the discovery of paternity, of the male's role in breeding, and the importance of genetic selection. Originally, the domestication of animals was a religious, sacred act and an emotional act in which the animals were domesticated because of their symbolic connection to the great universal religion of the goddess. But as man took over stock breeding, the cattle herds took on secular aspect. They became symbols of male wealth, power, and potency. And I see that psychosis all around us. In fact, the neighbor down the road just said to me the other day, your wealth is out there in the cattle. I'm like, no, that's not my wealth. Those are my sisters and brothers. They're not wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they try to have animals, they try to have this wealth on pieces of property that are too small. And
And you can't, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It cannot be an accident that the word capitalism comes from the Latin word capit or capitalium, originally referring to the head of cattle.
Okay. Decapitate. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Millennia of women's work or cooperative work laid the groundwork for the male revolution of the Bronze Age. In a relatively short time, men began to make improvements in tools and methods, and always in the direction of mass production. It's very likely that women in cooperative labor had not made these improvements because they were reluctant to break their direct connection with their materials. Craft was a sacred ritual, a matter of rhythm and movement, a matter of tactility. The Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this in crafts. All of these crafts people we talked about were men, but they were tactile. They knew right? They didn't. But the more advanced tools and techniques developed by men interposed themselves between the body of the crafter and the body of the mother substance. And so the task became objectified, secularized, and monetized.
Mm-hmm.
All of the Bronze Age improvements were in the direction of speed up, mass production, quantity over quality, the factory and assembly line. And the great mother of all in the Bronze Age was reified into a mere vessel of male seed, for male seed. Women, in male eyes, was no longer a powerful creator in her own right, but a piece of property like his cattle. His new wealth, his new power over life, his new military ability to maim, terrify, and slaughter by the hundreds and thousands gave men a haughty contempt for life. I saw that psychosis. And the man I was involved with said, if I had my druthers, Ingrid, I would have come in there and just slaughtered all your pigs and left them laying in stinking piles for you.
What a mean thing to say.
Yeah. It's what he absolutely wanted to do. Jealous. Right? Once man had been in awe of life, but now he could push it around. He could kill it for purposes other than eating. And he could kill it from a distance, so he didn't have to look in its eyes as he killed it.
Mm-hmm.
Man's new contempt for life extended to women, of course, since for millennia she had stood as the numinous symbol of life's sacredness, life's holy power. And now he had the power, and he found he could easily invent his own sacredness by fiat. And what is the petrodollar, the currency we use today, called? Fiat currency.
Mm-hmm.
Psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
In early patriarchy, women's ancient community tasks, equality tasks, were turned into slave labor. Women and men both produced the surplus products on which the elite white men based their secular power and control. In the next stage of economic development, the slave tasks became the industrial occupations of all colored people. White people didn't work, while the white men and their wives were exempt from labor.
Mm-hmm.
The forced labor, working class labor, now freed elite white males to become lawyers, judges, doctors, artists, priests, and warriors, specialized, privileged occupations that all others were barred from. And again, I'm not bashing white men here, but we have to understand the psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
Patriarchal law, psychosis, is often called the will of God, but in fact is a political legal system designed purposely to maintain male power through institutional control of female energy and all other energies deemed subhuman. Under patriarchal legal, religious, and economic social situations, some men dominate other men, but all men benefit from their organized domination of the community of women, which is no longer a community. Patriarchy breaks up the female collective by forcibly capturing and imprisoning each woman's female energy within the patrilocal family. Within this isolation cell, each woman's creative energy becomes servant energy, directed and owned by men. Mm-hmm. And Confucius in China even advocated the patriarchal totalitarian state. The goddess mother had been all-powerful, but she was also the mother of sons as well as daughters. Sons came from her body, were nourished by her breasts, and it was not her desire that men should be degraded or destroyed, or women degraded or destroyed, or anybody of any other skin color than white degraded or destroyed. Under matriarchy, men were not reduced to mechanical units, to slave labor or subhuman objects. It was not a direct opposition to what we have now. Everyone was equal. She knew that she was the parent, and she did not have to enforce unnatural religion with unnatural law. She desires only free and graceful worshipers. And in no goddess religion ever known were people ever depicted on their knees, ever.
Anyone that's ever never depicted on their knees?
No, not in goddess religions.
Okay.
So that's where we'll end, with the filth of the patriarchal psychosis, and this filth inhabits us. This is why we have such a need for external cleanliness, because of this filth that has been programmed into us for millennia.
And it touches absolutely everything in our lives, our psychology, any problem that you think is due to some external situation. We really have to dig inside of us and see that the sexual repression, this craziness, it's so deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And the work to get past it is not just external. There's so much. I think that's the big challenge here.
It's not external. It's the work to get past it, is to get through it, and to let it go is all internal. That's
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And that's where the challenge comes as well, because we're okay. I'm willing to go live in a self-sustainable society. I want to be self-sustainable. I want to be ecological. I want to be back in nature. I want to be healthy, but I want to be the same person, right? And
I want to live by exactly the same way, right? Yeah.
And say have the same beliefs and have the same
personality.
Psychosis. And that's where it's really challenging to kind of allow yourself to be rebuilt and reborn, right?
Well, and it's challenging. So as I do my planetary watching in the morning, I get to Grandmother Moon. Right now she's last in how I chart. So then I make my statement to her. Grandmother Moon, great mother, thank you for lending me your power and aid in doing my great work of letting go of all this patriarchal, all this mechanistic filth, the psychosis, so that I can be and become the most loving, kind, radiantly happy, powerful woman I possibly can be. Sensei of hundreds of thousands of owl sustainable life dojos and billions of acres of owl self-regulating cohabitation mudicas. And as I say this, it's infiltrating, it's coming into my body, and you become more and more and more aware of the underlying psychosis.
Right.
Why people act the way they do, and it gets angering. I felt this morning, and I went to my acupuncture appointment, and my acupuncturist said, when she checked my pulses, she's like, your liver is very angry this morning. But I was expressing to her my anger, and it's not directed at anybody. It's directed at this. It's just anger with this system, and that people we so desperately cling to it. the psychosis.
Mm-hmm. A dog wants up.
Yeah, dog doing something she's not supposed to do.
Oh man. Well, so there's a lot to do and a lot to talk about, and obviously we're not going to get to all of that right now. So let's invite people for our next session next week. Are we going to continue on this?
Oh yeah, we're going to delve further into patriarchal more and more, because it's intertwined everywhere.
Yeah, and I was going to get into it and start giving examples, or I was going to say how much work there is to do, each one of us to find it constantly. It's very much present in the Toltec teachings, where they look to, they see them as the predators. That's what they call them. This entity, this universal entity, of the predator, and how it's they mention many times, it's in our own minds. It's we ourselves are that same entity, that psychotic entity, and it's and freedom. Big part of the freedom work they did was being able to see that, and then obviously stalk yourself into finding in which behaviors you are replicating that, right? So there's so much to talk about, and you're probably going to be throwing so many wonderful, amazing pieces of information that are going to help us do this. So I mean, the work is getting done here, and then of course, if somebody wants to go internal and external and go all in, they can join us at alohainidao.com. But otherwise, we're doing it, and we're sharing it here live with anybody that is watching here. So if you're watching this, it means that you're onto something. You're on something, and please be onto something. Recognize this psychosis, because it's very much real, and please have and I call this I have two principles now. One is the consciousness principle of being conscious that this is this, and I call it the birthing principle, and then I have the reproductive principle, which is be conscious of this, but at the same time become even more conscious and aware that we can overcome it, that we have the power to as a humanity to actually
just let it go. There's no need to overcome it. We can just let it go, or
whatever word you want to use, but we can let go of it. We can get past it. We can grow away from it. We can evolve from that. We can
absolutely.
But I've seen even Toltec teachers, they have the first consciousness, they're very much aware of this, but they don't have this other one. They really think that we're stuck there. And
because they're not getting what Umberto Maturana and Francisco Varela said. Mm-hmm. This world we've brought forth is not the only world. Mm-hmm. But that's Dr. Violdo, Dr. Don Oscar Miro Quesada, Don Miguel Ruiz. They all are taking their teachings and twisting them into the psychosis so that we can make the psychosis better.
They're not talking about that second level of consciousness that I call the reproductive principle.
Yeah,
they don't want to reproduce a new world. They're comfortable. That's because they're comfortable, because they're patriarchs themselves. They are so happy with all the money they get from
absolutely
from the status quo they're living. They're just so comfortable there. They don't want that to change.
No, they don't.
That's it.
They don't.
So we do. So we are the difference here, and people should really be listening to this and to us.
Yeah, they're not. None of them are teaching. What was the first thing I said from the Book of Wisdom? The first principle is love, munai.
They're yeah. Where's their love? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is going to continue, and if nothing else has to be said, we will pause this. We will let it continue next week.
Yeah, we'll let it continue next week.
Alrighty then. So have you a wonderful night, everyone, and we'll see you next time. And I'll end this live stream.